Hello and welcome to the LGFA talk show. I'm delighted to be back in the hot seat, joined by Michelle Ryan and Denise Masterson. We're just going to go straight in and talk about all the football that happened at the weekend, and we'll preview the upcoming matches. So girls, we'll look at the senior results first of all. We'll start with Michelle, your own performance. Monaghan v Waterford. Waterford, you were comprehensive winners, 7-19 to 110. So do you want to talk us through the game? A great result for you, which basically means now you're through, bar Dublin, I suppose, falling to Monaghan.
Yeah, look, I think I said it in the previous weeks. We knew it was going to be a really important game for us. Haven't had much experience playing against Monaghan over recent years, and despite them being relegated down to Division 2, we weren't really reading too much into that. So look, it was as I said, it was a long trek up to Monaghan, and I suppose it took us maybe a while to get to grips with the game. In the first half, we wouldn't have been entirely happy with our performance in the first half, and Monaghan really did throw everything at us. And to be honest, inside the dressing room at half time, we got a stiff talking to. Probably as we weren't playing to maybe our potential and our standards, maybe it slipped a little bit in the first half, and that talking to was merited. And we went out in the second half, and I think within maybe 7 or 8 minutes, we'd put up 2-8 on the scoreboard.
Yeah, your full forward line, yourself and Fennell and Delahunty, were prolific.
I mean, Emer was just absolutely on fire. She got 3-4 in total, but she got 3 goals within 5 minutes in the first half. And to be honest, they were crucial because, as I said, we probably weren't playing the way we as
fluently,
direct, as we should have been, exactly. And maybe we were trying to then work the ball maybe that bit too close into goal and tread the ball through the eye of a needle. Really perfect pass rather than taking the points that we're on. But she scored 3 incredible goals in the first half, and they were kind of the platform then that we could move on with in the second half. And I suppose the positives we took out of it was the contributions of everybody on the pitch with regards to the build up of scores and the creation of scores and the taking of scores, and we got to use a lot of our bench as well, so look, incredibly happy. And I suppose we were very aware that this time last year, we had lost by a point to Westmeath, and meant we were in relegation playoffs. So look, that was a huge, a huge source of motivation for us that we wouldn't let that happen this year. So
that would have been an aim for you at the start of the year.
Absolutely,
obviously.
It would have. And I suppose 2 years ago we got into a stage where we got to a quarter final. Last year, as I said, we were disappointed not to have gotten there, so we wanted to really make up for that. So we're happy enough, to be honest.
And I suppose, Denise, maybe to bring you in, looking at Monaghan, disappointing result for them. They are facing Division 2 football. You would have had huge battles with Monaghan down the years. Traditionally they've been such a solid team, so it's just disappointing to see them in the position they're in at the minute.
We would have had huge battles at Monaghan. I mean, I think it was in 2009 we beat them in the All-Ireland semi-final. And I mean, they would have then themselves gone on to compete in 3, was it, in a row as well, under Greg before he took over with Dublin. So, I mean, they would have been, when I was playing,
you'd be looking up to them.
Monaghan would have been up there with Cork. Do you know what I mean? They would have been up there with the best in the country. So it's been a huge fall from grace, I suppose, and it's kind of happened quite quickly,
hasn't it? Yeah. And you kind of wonder how and why. I suppose I've been chatting to people, they haven't really had any underage players coming through of note. You'd wonder what structures are like in the county. Now their minors have gotten to the just at the weekend, they had a brilliant result against Meath. They in the first minor A All-Ireland final in 20 years. So I suppose they're probably looking at that. It's looking, they're facing a match against Dublin. It's looking like they will be in a relegation playoff. So
they haven't been relegated
from Division 2.
Yeah, it's not certainly not a good season for them. But I think the word we were bandying around last week was transition as well. And I think Cork really, they've done transition so well throughout.
To a T.
Yeah, and they lose their senior players. There just seems to be something within the group that dictates what the younger players come into, and I think Dublin have established that now as well, and I think it's huge. I think there has to be some core element within the group that remains no matter how senior the players that are going are, and I think Monaghan maybe have faltered,
but then you still look at Donegal, their club team's still going very strong, so it's hard to figure out.
And also, sorry, just as well, I suppose notable that Cora Courtney didn't actually play on Saturday as well.
That, yeah, big loss.
Yeah, which was a massive loss. And as to whether she'll be available now to them with this weekend, she did do the warm up, but her leg was heavily strapped, and she didn't make the start of the game. So like, she would have been an incredible loss to them last Saturday, and hopefully, you know, she's available to them this weekend.
Yeah, and I suppose Cork, you know, their year in transition was an All-Ireland final loss. You know, and an All-Ireland semi-final. Yeah. So look, we'll move on to Cork's result at the weekend. No surprise really. Cork 6-19, Cavan 3-8. You know, I thought Cavan put up a really, really spirited performance, you know, following on from their big one over Armagh, that group. The highlight for me in Cavan's performance was Aisling Doonan's penalty. I don't know if you saw it, but just such a bit of class. But look, Cork 6-19, it was business as usual, really.
Yeah, I suppose, look, it really was. And like you said, Cavan definitely did put in a spirited performance, but I suppose they were looking at that game as well as looked at throw everything at Cork. They had nothing really to lose. I mean, if you're looking at it, you know, honestly and frankly and coldly, the first game in these group stages was the massive game for Cavan. Exactly. And to get that win over Armagh, and then to be, I suppose, looking forward to playing like one of the top teams in the country and pitting themselves against it, and as you said, kind of equipping themselves very well.
Yeah, I mean, up to half time, it was, absolutely, you know, over and back. Taking
some very impressive scores. So, and Aisling Sheridan got a very impressive goal as well there. Absolutely. But look, Cork, I suppose, will be happy enough. Like, they were ruthless enough with themselves in their score. Taking 6-19 is a huge score in championship football. And, you know, I suppose they've had a few injuries as well. But as Denise alluded to,
Cotter in midfield's a big loss.
She's a huge playmaker. She really is. I hard to stop.
This year, her return to the squad was one of the main reasons that Cork were kind of coming back to that form. And did she break her wrist? I think
she broke her hand in a I'm not sure, was it a club game?
I mean, will she be back? But, you know, possibly not. Then you've Anya O'Sullivan coming in and on.
Exactly. I mean, you look at their bench and you know that they have the options that are there. And I think, you know, Anya O'Sullivan is a real score getter.
Brilliant player,
and I think it was her first start maybe in the last number of matches. So she'll be eager to, you know, hold on to that place as well. So,
you know, conceding 3-8. If there was a chink in the Cork armour, would their full back line possibly be an area that teams down the line might be looking to focus on? Do
you want to take that?
I suppose having played against that full back line, it's I wouldn't say by any stretch of the imagination it's a weak line at all. I suppose the one thing that is there about Cork is, and we've seen it in the games that, you know, have been televised and we've watched so far, is you now have, we'll say, the likes of, we'll say, Orla Finn and all of those forwards even featuring back in the full back line, putting on the pressure on the forwards. And it's also a feature of Dublin's game with the likes of Noel Healy and so on filtering back. I suppose, look, nothing moves faster than the ball, and if you can move the ball fast and accurately, you know, into that forward line before that gives those teams times to get bodies back, then
every full back line will struggle.
Exactly, you know. So look, it's no easy feat to get 3 goals against the Cork defence. Absolutely not. So they will definitely be able to take some promise from that. But look, I suppose, as I said, with the top teams now, it is a real feature that, you know, positions kind of tend to mean nothing these days in a certain sense. And you have, as I said, the likes of the forwards filtering back, and Cork are very good at that. Dublin are very, very good at that. So look, I think, you know, as I said, Cavan will take a lot of heart from that scoreline, to be honest.
Yeah, I would agree completely. It would have been the same in all the encounters Dublin have had with Cork. Cork like to get back and protect the D, and like Michelle said, you just need to move the ball fast. But one-on-one individual battles, I suppose it depends on who they're coming up against as well. Yeah. You know, it depends on the calibre of the forward. So
and maybe if there is a chink in that full back line, then that's why the need for those forwards to filter back.
Yeah, I think it's just a general style of play as well. I think wing forwards are just working a lot harder, and Cork have been doing that for years. I mean, they always just got back and protected the D and pushed it out. But like Michelle said, if you have to move the ball fast, but I don't know necessarily if that's why they do it in terms of protecting their full back line. I just think it's their style of play.
Their style of play.
Yeah.
And also it makes them very different on the very difficult to mark on the counter attack, because I mean Cork and Dublin, when they put on enough pressure, and if they break that attack down, I mean they move the ball incredibly fast up the pitch, and you know they're hoping that they've, I suppose, left enough space to feed a ball into one or two top class forwards, fast forwards who can take on a defender one-on-one, and they're very, very good at that. So look, I suppose it works from a defensive point of view, but also from attack.
Yeah, which we'll move on to the next game, which Tyrone did brilliantly on Saturday, and beat Donegal on a scoreline of 3-12 to 3-9. Credit to Tyrone, you know, as a Donegal woman, very disappointed with the result, but I mean, credit to Tyrone, defensively so well organised. They dropped those half forwards back, their midfielders drop back, but the pace at which they moved the ball at going forward, they kicked the ball beautifully. Maria Canavan had a brilliant game at 11. She dropped in and out of pockets, and they took their scores. Michelle, you had stats.
I suppose, look, I probably thought leading into the game that Donegal might edge it.
I think that was the common feeling.
No disrespect to Tyrone, I mean they're a very fast team, and obviously only had been beaten by 3 points by Mayo as well, so. But when I was looking at the stats over the last number of days, I mean, it was tit for tat, to be honest, in most areas. But I suppose one of the most telling things was that while Donegal were slightly ahead when it came to number of attacks and, I suppose, number of shots and attack rate and efficiency, at the end of the day, it was Tyrone who actually were well ahead when it came to the conversion rate. I think they were nearly 20% to the better for their conversion rate. And actually, I think had doubled the amount of scorers.
And I mean, that's really crucial. Geraldine McLaughlin scored 2-5, another brilliant game. Could have been a lot worse had that for Tyrone, had they not set up as defensively as they did. But to depend so much on Geraldine, I think that's where Donegal might be struggling, and they might continue to struggle.
Interesting stat that you had. Tyrone had double the scorers.
It's
much more spread out amongst the team.
Yeah,
exactly. So I mean, like, if you're looking at coming up against Donegal, you're probably, like, I suppose, based on the matches you just mentioned and Geraldine, you're looking at if you can, keep Geraldine McLaughlin quiet, and you can, make life a bit difficult for her in the forward line. I suppose you're going to be thinking, you're going to be doing well when it comes up against Donegal. Whereas, as you said, Tyrone, that spread of scores, I mean, if you have scores coming from your midfield and your backs and your forward line, like, I mean, it's a huge asset to have. It really is.
Yeah, I was particularly impressed with their half-back as well. Niamh McGarry, she was fantastic, got sin-binned, but it didn't seem to affect Tyrone at all. Looking at Tyrone, I feel, and they'll take great heart from this, looking at Tyrone going forward in Ulster in the next 2 to 3 years. You have Donegal, who are currently in transition, might be in transition next year. You have Monaghan in the same boat. You have Armagh, who've lost heavily in the few Ulster finals. I'd say Tyrone are looking at that Ulster Championship and really identifying it as an area that they can get medals in, really. And I think if they, sort out their conditioning, their strength and conditioning, they get maybe next year a bit more experience, we could be looking at Ulster champions in the next couple of years.
Yeah, very impressive. And I think, wasn't that without Niamh Woods as well?
Niamh Woods was away with netball.
With the netball, and she's a huge playmaker for them as well.
Massive, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so fair play to them. And moving on, finally, the last game that we watched at the weekend, we had Westmeath, who were on the wrong side of a 2-13 to 1-3 defeat against Galway. So, Galway are now through 2 wins in the group, safely through to the next round. Westmeath, I suppose, will be disappointed with maybe only getting 1-3 on the board and losing, I suppose, quite comprehensively in the end up.
Yeah, and I suppose Galway really needed that win, I think, and they really needed to have a comprehensive win. I just don't think they've been firing on all cylinders, but it was a good win. I think they had a slow start, but not quite as slow as the weekend before. But I mean, it's a good result for Galway and puts them in a great position now, but look, even Westmeath against Dublin, I'm sure they'll be really disappointed with that 1-3 scoreline. I mean, I thought they really
their performance was brilliant in the Leinster final.
And I wouldn't have thought they would have suffered that heavy a defeat against Galway. But
maybe the long break, and maybe maybe morale was just lower than.
Well, it's funny you say the long break, because then aren't the Galway management thinks the girls are tired after being out 5 weeks in a row. So it's hard to know whether you're. I don't know what you would rather, Michelle, as a player, playing 5 weeks in a row or having the break.
Galway, I mean, those games were pretty tough games, to be honest. and they've had a pretty intense over the last number of weeks, all right. And I think they'll look, as you said, they'll be happy to have a comprehensive victory, especially I suppose after the start they had against Kerry the week before, coming off the back of the 2 matches against Mayo. Personally, I kind of like when the games are coming. Do you know what I mean? I mean, one of the biggest, I suppose, assets for us over the last 2 weeks was, do you know, that we had to, I suppose, dust ourselves off pretty quick after the Dublin game, do you know, to get ready for the Monaghan game, and do you know, it doesn't leave you too much time to dwell on things when things are going badly, I suppose, or maybe you've been beaten pretty comprehensively. So in that sense, it can be quite good, but it is tough. Having said that, it is tough to recover, and also I suppose 3 or 4 weekends on the trot, like, you know, energy and, you know, momentum.
There's a niggle here, there.
Yeah, exactly. Will bring you so far, but then, as you said, recovery is hugely important. Like a weekend, maybe in between, you know, gives times for those things to be sorted out. And
even with Galway, it's even from a sense of team bonding. Like, I know McBowen spoke at the launch that Dublin had their team bonding weekend after Leinster. I'm sure other teams around the country did the same, and that's also really important, you know, for a team. So having that downtime, Galway maybe haven't had it, but now look, they'll be able to relax this weekend and see how the rest of it pans out. But again, the Leonards at the forefront of the scoring, no more than Geraldine McLaughlin with Donegal. I always feel if the Leonards are stopped, where's Galway's plan B, you know?
Yeah.
So it's one to watch.
I think Roisin got a fine score. Actually, topped up a fine score at the weekend. So, yeah, absolutely, totally agree.
So we'll move on to the fixtures this weekend for the Senior Championship. A few groups, you know, there's a lot up for grabs. We look at Group 1 first of all. Armagh playing Cork. You know, look, as a neutral, you'd feel that there's nothing going to be other than a Cork win here, really. And Armagh facing relegation. Armagh have to win to avoid that relegation battle, but you know, what do you think, girls?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be tipping Cork, and you would think Cork and Cavan are going to come out of that group, and you know, it's a tough game for Armagh. I mean, I'm sure they're going to go at it, but you'd be surprised if it was any other result other than Cork, you know. So you would imagine that Cork and Cavan will be coming out of that group.
Yeah. I suppose Cork will be looking to not concede 3-8. Armagh will have Caroline O'Hanlon back from the Netball World Cup. She'll give them a huge lift. Well, I'd imagine she will be back. She'll give them a huge lift, but you know, Michelle, you probably agree.
Absolutely, and the fact that Caroline O'Hanlon will be back will actually be a huge asset to Armagh, because there's no denying, I suppose, the quality of player that she is, and you know, she really kind of pulls the strings there around the middle of the field, and is always good for a score or two, more often than not a goal, to be honest. You know, so look, it'll be a huge boost for Armagh. But I suppose, look, the way Cork have been playing at the moment, and I suppose the strength and depth that's there in the panel, and the fact that, you know, they've been pretty relentless over the last number of weeks. It's hard to see anything other than a Cork victory, but...
Yeah, a Cork victory with, you know, maybe Fee Fitzgerald giving some of his, you know, fringe players a run and getting game time for them. Group 2, I suppose we're in a similar enough situation, unless Monaghan can, you know, produce a miracle performance and overcome Dublin. They'll also be looking at relegation. I personally just see Dublin setting out their stall, sending out another message of intent, and I think it could be, you know, a really, really bad score for Monaghan.
Yeah, and I'd say Monaghan are a bit shook after the scoreline last weekend as well, so you can't imagine morale will be high there, which won't help them going into that game. Now, the other side of that is they have absolutely nothing to lose. They might just go out and say, look, but no, you can't see that.
I think the quality Dublin have, and we got a real, not even a glimpse, we got a show from Dublin of what they're planning. Might have questioned them, you know, after the Leinster final. Was it the Dublin that we've seen last year? But, you know, it's probably a case that McBowen has his training time to perfection, and we're going to see Dublin going at full tilt from here on in. Group 3, you know, a really, really up everything up for grabs here. We have Kerry at home to Westmeath. Winner goes into a playoff, loser goes into a relegation playoff. Really hard one to call. What do you think?
Very hard one to call, to be honest. I suppose the only thing, as we've mentioned already, is as to whether Westmeath can kind of pick themselves up now after the last few weeks. Obviously, they will be disappointed with the score last weekend, and I think the game is on down at Fitzgerald Stadium down in Kerry. So you know, it's not an easy scenario for Westmeath to be in. Kerry, you know, they're a tricky team. You know, they're a tricky team to put away. Very, very dangerous up front. And I suppose we mentioned it here before, maybe 2 weeks ago. Do you know that maybe at times they just let games slip from them, but I know they started very well against Galway, and you know, 1-8 to a point in the first half.
Notably
of that game.
in that, Louise Murray Hurtig and Hannah O'Donoghue both went off just after.
Actually, I think 4 of their starting forwards went off in the second half, which was a bit strange.
Unless there were injuries or what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. But look. Personally, I think Kerry will be out to prove a point now as well. You know, I mean, they're a good quality side. I think maybe they will maybe have a bit too much firepower up front for Westmeath. Interesting enough as well will be, I suppose, you know, the battle there around the middle of the field. But to be honest, Westmeath have a fairly decent defence as well. You know, so it's a tough one.
It's very tough. And funnily enough, there was a corresponding fixture last year to stay up in Division 1, and Westmeath won that fixture, you know, so they have performances
exactly. And actually now that I think about it, this time last year it was ourselves in Westmeath in a do or die game in the groups, and it came down to it was a very close encounter. It came down to a free in the dying minutes of the match that Westmeath got and won and put over, and you know, they were the ones who qualified, and we ended up in a relegation battle. So look, they have that fight in them, you know, and they'll know as well. They'll take confidence from having that game last year as well.
And their full back line, you know, young Rachel Dillon, absolute class act. Jenny Rogers has been there for years, a brilliant full back. You know, you could see the two of them, you know, pressing that Kerry forward line. Then if Westmeath stick to their game plan, if their morale is high, if they maybe push Fiona Claffey up the pitch a bit, get her in a running game, they're really in with the shout, and I would have fingers crossed for Westmeath, because I feel they came up from intermediate in 2011 and they've really, really held their stall. So I'd hate to see them.
Westmeath, because I would feel exactly the same. There's just something gritty about them, and I would love to see them. Yeah, there's a bit, I don't know, they're feisty or something.
Absolutely, there's fire there, and there's pride there. There really, really is, and there's some class players,
super players, but it's just whether or not they'll have the firepower compared to
it's
Kerry.
The firepower really, and that 1-3 is concerning. You know, it is. You know, I noticed Lucy McCartan, who's a soccer player as well, she wasn't playing at the weekend. I feel if Lucy's maybe back in the squad, she's that kind of player who can get you a goal or two out of nothing. You know, she's a great finisher. So if she's there, she could push it over the line for them. And the biggest game, I feel, of the weekend.
Absolutely.
I think we called it a couple of weeks ago.
I think you called it the group of football.
Group of football, and that it has been. But we also actually, and I suppose we possibly didn't give Tyrone enough credit or respect, and I put my hand up, we actually identified this fixture as the fixture whereby these two teams will be playing each other to possibly avoid Cork in a semi-final. So I suppose the state of play in this group, you have Mayo on +3, having won a match. You have Tyrone on 0 points difference, having won a match, and you have Donegal on -3 points, having lost a match. So basically, anything can happen in this group at the weekend, and it's all out of Tyrone's hands at this stage. So girls, how do you see it going?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know how you could call this. I'm looking forward to seeing it though, to be honest. As you said, it is absolutely all to play for. Donegal need to win by 4 points to be absolutely sure.
So if Donegal win by 4, Donegal and Tyrone go through and Mayo are out. If Donegal win by 3, you have a playoff. So you have the 3 teams in a playoff. You'll have 2 teams will play each other. The loser will play the team who hasn't been picked out, and then if Mayo win, Donegal are gone.
So it's just going to be incredibly riveting, I think, to be honest. 2 top class sides. As we've already mentioned, as to whether, I suppose, Donegal can just maybe pick themselves up. I had no doubt they were disappointed with last week and pick themselves up, and you know, we've seen the top quality side that they are in the Ulster final, and how they, I suppose, demolished the opposition in Ulster at that stage. And maybe, as we've mentioned, a little bit over reliant on certain players in attack, and if they can maybe just I suppose sort that out, I mean, but I suppose having seen Mayo play as well, and
Mayo will pack that defence and they'll be physical.
They did that against Galway.
And they'll break, and they have Rachel Kearns, who's capable of, I'd say her average score is probably 5 to 6 points a match so far in the championship.
Exactly, and she really came back into the game in the Tyrone. I think she was, I remember she was substituted in the Connacht final in the replay, but came back on, I think scored 2-3 against Tyrone in the last stage, So look, I think Mayo will probably be the more confident side going into the game, but look, it's absolutely all to play for. Who knows how it's going to go, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd feel the same. It's hard to call. I don't know why. A little part of me is calling Donegal a little bit more, maybe.
Hopefully you're right.
I don't know why, but I'll probably be wrong. But it's a very tight game to call, and it's been a really tight group, and you just wonder, they're all so evenly matched, you wonder how they would fare with a Dublin or a Cork in that group.
That's it.
Because they've been so evenly matched, Mayo, Donegal,
and you'd wonder at what level they're evenly matched at.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if you had a Cork or a Dublin in that group, or how would the score lines have been there?
Yeah, I could see it as well. I mean, I know both managers are very tactical. They're both really into their matchups. You could just see it being a complete tactical battle. I personally would love to just see Donegal play football. I'd love to see them kicking the ball, and I've said it a lot in the last couple of weeks. I'd just love to get natural footballers on the ball, get them kicking the ball, get them supporting each other, and getting the ball in early to Geraldine McLaughlin, because even if she does have 2, 3, 4 players on her, as she did at the weekend, she's still capable of scoring that. And I'd love to see Niamh Hegarty, get a proper run at centre forward. She's kind of been dipping in and out of the full forward line. Niamh Hegarty at 11 on her day is also unmarkable. She'll give the ball early. She'll go at defences. So that's what I'd love to see, and hopefully a Donegal win. But it's I do. Look, it's do or die for this team. It's do or die for a lot of girls on this team. A lot of these girls, this was one last year. Give it one more go. So I think if they get themselves back up, get a bit of spirit in the camp and a bit of confidence in each other and a bit of confidence in the game plan, I think they'll get over the line. But it's going to be an ultimate battle, and it's live on TG Cahir as well, so hopefully a big audience. Definitely game of the weekend, definitely. So look, that's the senior. We'll move on to the intermediate results. First of all, from the weekend, in Group 1 we had Kildare, who for me, surprisingly, with all due respect to Kildare, overcame Sligo on a scoreline of 3-9 to 1-11. I'd imagine Sligo will be very disappointed. They now sit second in the group. They're going through a bit of a managerial change, as far as I know, that there was a vote of no confidence in their management team leading up to the match, so that probably didn't, do them any good. But a good one for Kildare all the same.
God, yeah, the Kildare will be very, very happy with that. And look, as you said, Sligo definitely will be disappointed. And look, when there are things, I suppose, like that going on in the background,
it's very hard to go out.
Like, you do try and put them to the back of your mind, you do try and just focus on the games ahead. But they definitely do have their impact, and they definitely would have their impact, on the training field and in the dressing room and so on. So look, it'll be disappointing that they're going through that as well. Hopefully it'll get sorted for them soon. But look, Kildare will take a huge amount of positives out of that. Like, they've been, I suppose, since they won the intermediate and came up senior and then went back down intermediate. They're giving a good account of themselves.
Absolutely,
and they I suppose they are in the top 4 or 5 teams in the group. So I think they'll be pretty happy with that, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also in that group we had Down beating Limerick on a scoreline of 2-9 to 8 points. Limerick up to intermediate, they're accounting for themselves very well. They'll be disappointed now to be bottom of that group, but good performances all the same. So really, you're looking at that group now. You're looking at Kildare and Sligo possibly to come out, with Down being happy enough with that result and to maintain their status as well at intermediate. Moving on to Group 2. Look, Tipperary 7-22, Longford 2-4.
What can you say?
Yeah, it's huge, and I've said it over again. Tipperary should not be in the intermediate grade. It's doing Tip absolutely no favours. And, you know, Longford are a very, very good team. They were really competitive last year in the intermediate. That's not going to do them any good either, girls. Are, you know.
No, and I think Longford's 2 goals actually came in the first half, you know, so... And look, when you're getting there's an onslaught from Tip like that, 7-22, like, so Longford only scored, you know, 4 points in the last 35 minutes of the game. You know, like, as you said, it's not doing either team any good. Tip are just, I suppose, just ploughing through the group stages here now. Like we've already mentioned, they're certain favourites for the intermediate championship now. But look, it's hard to see who's going to stop them, to be honest. It really, really is.
You know, it brings up that question again of, you know, relegation from senior is it beneficial? You experienced it. It was beneficial for Waterford.
To be honest, looking back at it now, we would probably have a very different view of it than we did at the time. Now, at the time, I mean, we'd gone through, I suppose, a few years in senior where, look, we weren't competing and we were going out and maybe going through the motions. We didn't have the strength and depth in the panel and the players that you know, to progress in senior. And I'll never forget losing that relegation match, and it genuinely felt like the end of the world. And I remember not only going back home, but going back to Waterford, and people just couldn't believe that Waterford Ladies football were now going to be intermediate after, I suppose, look, the golden era of the 90s and even still contesting All-Ireland and finals in the early 2000s. But looking back at it now, it was probably the best thing that happened, and it had to happen. And you'd maybe when you go down, like, you feel maybe that, look, you're probably going to come straight back up because you've been the senior team, you're going down, you know. But that certainly didn't happen for us. And we went down. Our first intermediate championship was 2009, and we contested 3 intermediate All-Irelands, and it was a 2015 All-Ireland that we won. Like, it's not a case
similar. I mean, you know, it was 2010 when we were in the senior All-Ireland final with them, and you know, it
actually is an incredibly competitive championship down there. It's incredibly physical. It's incredibly tough, and you know, we would have. I suppose we would have been delighted to be in a 2010 intermediate final, the game before yourselves, and you know, lost it. And then, you know, it just took a lot to get
probably
there.
Lost a few players between all those finals, gained a few players.
But to be honest, getting to an All-Ireland final then in 2010, gradually you could see, I suppose, the underage structure and the club structure and things, just the interest in it being generated again. A lot more, I suppose, emphasis would have been put on the underage and schools and so on, and there was good management put in place, and we reaped the benefits of that layers. We really did build, and we really did, I suppose, the players that would have been contesting then in under 14, under 16 B and under minor B All-Irelands, they progressed onto the panel,
and they had something to play for at senior level.
It was with those that we won the All-Ireland in 2015. So look, from our perspective, it was a fantastic thing, but the thing about Tipperary is, I don't think they've had any sort of decline to merit going down to senior. Do you know what I mean? They're proving themselves now in the intermediate championship that they are a senior team and that they can compete with senior. We've seen them, how competitive they've been in Division 1 league this year. Do you know what I mean? It's not. And I mean,
even if you look at last year, the teams, yourselves, Westmeath, Cavan and Tipperary, they were your 4 candidates for relegation. And I would feel none of those teams were candidates for relegation. So, you know, maybe it brings into question, do you have a relegation playoff every second year? You know, it's I suppose it's something to look at.
It's a tough one. It really is tough.
And I mean, that says a lot about the state of football.
Absolutely.
You know,
it's brilliant.
if you're looking at teams being relegated and that they're strong enough to stay up there, I do think sometimes these things are cyclical, and it can depend on the team that's going down. Like, you needed it, I'm sure maybe Tyrone needed to go down to regroup, and now they're coming back up, and maybe it'll progress now onto the quarter-final stages. But so maybe it depends. And I mean, Tipperary just seem to be they don't seem to be placed well at the moment. But if that's the structure, that's the structure, and all they can do is go out and play. And I'm sure they're trying to improve and would rather be playing senior as well. So you know, it's just, I suppose, unfortunate for the likes of Longford to be on the end of that. But
that's it. And then, you know, bringing us on to Meath. You know, Meath had a great win against Wicklow, 4-19 to 10 points. Meath lost the intermediate All-Ireland to Tyrone last year. They would have hoped to have, you know, gone a step further this year and won it. Big wins like that, but they'll probably look at the Tipperary one and think, what do we have to do? But again, young Emma Duggan, I think, had a powerful match and then went on and scored 112 in the minor semi-final, but was on the wrong end. But look, Meath looking like Meath and Tip obviously are going to get out of that group. Then in Group 3 we had Laois lost to Clare on a scoreline of 4-13 to 112. Disappointing for Laois. Clare will be happy to bounce back, having lost to Wexford the previous week. Thoughts on that game? Niamh O'Dea, I know Niamh O'Dea got 1-7, 1-8. Ailish Constantine's back in the Clare team. They're looking decent,
absolutely. And I think it maybe, based on the previous, I suppose, defeat, as we mentioned, to Wexford, they would have been disappointed with that. And I suppose Ailish Constantine coming back now and having had that great game under her belt, obviously it did add to the Clare structure against Laois. And look, we mentioned the top class players that Clare have in their side. They really do, and they're very dangerous. And Niamh O'Dea is an incredibly dangerous player. Personally, I think she'd make most inter-county teams.
I think she's a class act.
Yeah, incredible. And look, 4-13 is great scoring. Laois, 112.
You'd win a lot of games with that.
You would. Yeah. But I suppose we did kind of feel Clare might have had too much for Laois before the game, and it kind of proved right. And I know it was close enough in the league. I think Laois were beaten by Clare by only 3 points in the league, which just shows, I suppose, the progression of Clare even since then.
Yeah. So they're going from strength to strength. So in Group 4 we had Roscommon beating Offaly on a scoreline of 2-17 to 1-4. Look, Roscommon, 2 solid performances in that group. They've topped the group. They're again, like Clare, they're going steady enough. I think the last questions of a few teams in the latter stages. So looking at the fixtures, last matches in each group, we have Kildare against Down and we have Sligo against Limerick in Group 1. It's looking like Sligo and Kildare will go through. Any thoughts on any of those teams? We've discussed them extensively on results, but
I suppose the Wexford Laois match would probably be
in Group 3.
Do you know what I mean? Sorry, in Group 3.
Yeah.
I'm just looking through the fixtures there. I think that's probably the standout fixture, maybe, really.
Yeah, because you have Laois, I suppose, just down intermediate, not long down intermediate. If they lose to Wexford, they're in a relegation battle to go junior, which for a team of tradition, no more than Monaghan in senior status, if Laois were to get relegated. But look, Wexford, I think as well, we discussed them before, I think Wexford will ruffle feathers as well in the latter stages, but we'd probably expect a Wexford win.
Probably, Actually, sorry, going back to the group, like Kildare and Down could be it could be an interesting game as well. Both have come off 2 good wins last weekend.
So was Kildare looking to top the group?
Yeah, exactly.
And Down are looking to go through. Yeah, really.
Exactly. So that could be a key fixture as well.
And in Group 2, Wicklow against Tip and Meath against Longford. You're probably looking at heavy defeats for Wicklow and Longford. But again, both teams will want to put in performances because they don't want to be bottom place on score difference. So they'll be fighting for their lives in that sense. And in Group 4, Leitrim and Offaly playing to go through or get relegated. Do you want to call that one, anybody?
It's I suppose, look,
they're very evenly, you know, like Offaly got relegated from Division 3, but put in some really good performances in the league. Leitrim were out of the playoff positions in Division 4. Yeah. You know, looking at the scores against Roscommon, Leitrim or Offaly probably put in the better performance. Could tip in their favour. Yeah. Leitrim again, no more than Sligo. I think Leitrim, they got rid of their management team at the end of the league. So, you know, I would have thought that they would have sorted themselves out possibly for championship, but it doesn't really look that way.
No, and I suppose they've kind of, been in decline a little bit. We would have played at them an awful lot in intermediate, you know, would have been very, very strong. Now, obviously, the Ty sisters were playing then, and they were fantastic players, you know, and I don't think they're available to them or playing this year. But, so, you know, based on, I suppose, form over the last few weeks and months, you would probably go with Offaly, I suppose, as you said. Yeah, and maybe with the golf there at the weekend, Shane Larry might bring them a bit of luck. They'll be inspired. Look, moving on to the junior, we have Louth against London and we have Antrim against Fermanagh. Look, London, we never really know what team's going to come over each year. I'd be favouring Louth. I think they're going to win the Junior All-Ireland. I'd be favouring them for this match. What do you think?
Yeah, like you said, it's hard to know with the London team what's going to come over. So, you know, but like that, I mean, you'd have to fancy Louth, and they're going strong. And
yeah, they are, and they've had good results, and they're going well. Antrim Fermanagh, I feel they play each other every week.
It does feel like that, doesn't it?
Between the league and the championship.
It does feel like
so
that.
Antrim won the Ulster final. Fermanagh will have their Northern Ireland netball players back, the McGee sisters, who they had a big say. Antrim will have their netball players back, the McGee sisters. They had a big say in that Ulster final. I'd be tipping Fermanagh. I think they
really,
because it seems to ebb and flow.
Yeah,
and I think they'll be out for revenge in maybe the couple of weeks.
Yeah, Antrim were kind of my dark horse.
They were they were.
Stick with them. Yeah, I'm going to stick with them.
Yeah, great. Look, that's a roundup, girls. Great games to look forward to. They'll be on TG Cahar. There'll be highlights on Sunday. Again, as we do every week, you know, it's a call for people to get behind their county team and go to the matches and support. I suppose to finish off, we might go back to our red chair. If anybody has any red chair stories.
Do you want to go, Denise?
Yeah, I think Michelle had a good one. Indirectly involved, I feel.
Indirectly involved. Well, yeah, this is something that happened going to we were playing Armagh in the league. I think it was the start of last year, and we were travelling up the night before.
Plenty of money in Waterford,
and we were stopping off actually at the services petrol station in Paulstown in Kilkenny to collect our physio Colin. And we pulled into the car park, and the bus driver unknowingly opened both sides of the compartment under the bus. And so obviously Colin, the physio, has an awful lot of gear, so he was pushing in his gear and unknowingly knocked our cornerback Rebecca Casey's gear bag out of the other side of the bus, but no one obviously spotted it. So off we went anyway, all the way up to Armagh. And we land above in Armagh, and obviously we're taking our bags off the bus, and Rebecca sees she has her overnight bag, but she doesn't have her football gear bag. And
so two separate bags.
So she didn't have her gear bag, and was kind of wondering. She knew she definitely had it on the bus, so we figured out that the only real stop that it could have happened at would have been at Paulstown. So we. What we did, we rang the petrol station and asked had anybody left in a gear bag, and they said no, they hadn't seen anything, and we couldn't figure it out. And Rebecca was kind of going, Jesus, someone must have picked up the gear bag. So in fairness to the staff at the petrol station, they said, look, we'll have a look through our CCTV and we'll see if it did actually even fall out of the bus.
It was Saturday evening in Kilkenny.
Yeah. So fair play to them, they checked their CCTV, and you can clearly see Colin pushing in his gear and a gear bag falling out the other side, and us driving off. And but what was interesting then was, actually, you could then see a man come over and take the gear bag after
did he have a good look at it?
I couldn't tell you. I didn't see the footage now, but he came over, found the gear bag, and went off with it. But obviously didn't hand it into the petrol station. So then we couldn't figure out why he hadn't handed it into the petrol station, and Rebecca was wondering why no one had contacted her and tried to contact her to say, where you have your gear bag. So
this was all before the match.
This is all before the match. Yeah. Great preparation. Yeah. And so what ended up happening was the petrol station contacted the guards, and I don't know how they got the contact details of the man, maybe through his license plate number, or maybe someone in the petrol station knew him, and ended up having to go to this man's house and knock on his door and ask him if he had a gear bag belonging to a Waterford Ladies footballer, and why he hadn't tried to return it. And the poor man got an awful fright, and he protested that he'd been trying to ring Rebecca with the last number of hours because he'd found her number on the case of her gum shields. And
so he could look through the bag.
And the guards were like, no, you didn't try to contact the girl. She's no calls from you. So anyway, they took the gear bag and dropped it back into the petrol station for us to get it the following day on the way home. And obviously Rebecca got a loan of gear off the rest of us. But sure, the next day after the match, we were travelling home.
Did you win the match?
No, we didn't win the match.
How did Rebecca play?
Flying it. And so we're on the way home, and this is before the roaming changed. There was free roaming, so we crossed back over the border into the Republic, and Rebecca took out her phone and she saw she had voicemails from him the previous day. He had been trying to get in contact her. So the poor girl then had to contact him and apologise profusely for having the guards turn up at his door to get her gear back. But all was returned, and all's well that ends well anyway.
And the moral of the story is, physios, when you're getting on the bus, please be careful with all your gear. Very good. Look, just to finish, there's a huge event in Waterford, Michelle, this coming week, the World Games. You're involved in it a little bit, I suppose. Can you tell us what's going on?
Well, look, I suppose, I'm club chairperson down at home, so we're hosting one of the teams that's coming over, Galicia from Spain, and look, it's a huge event. It's a fantastic event.
How many teams roughly do you know?
I think, I'm not entirely sure, but there's teams in both the East and West Waterford. I'd nearly say there's about 40 clubs maybe in Waterford, between male and female clubs actually hosting teams. And look, it's a fantastic event. It's a great showcase for I suppose how far and worldwide that the games have spread around the world. And I know there's, I suppose, players who would have been playing on their county teams here who have travelled abroad for one reason or another and coming back. The likes of Caroline Kelly and Kerry, I know, is playing with Australia. So it's a huge event. And look, each club has been assigned a team or two, and they'll come out and visit the club, and they'll see, maybe train. They'll see the pitch, they see the setup, they meet the teams and the committees and so on, and I suppose the idea is that you just show them what it is here, and maybe a little bit of cultural aspect to it. Exactly. And I know there's also a kind of parade and event down in the WIT arena as well on the Sunday. So look, it's a great thing. As I said, it's a world
it's fantastic.
Games. It just goes to show the spread and the reach of the games, and it's important to celebrate that.
Brilliant. And look, hopefully the sun will still be shining and people will get out and support it.
Great. Absolutely.
Thanks, Michelle. That's it from us this week, and we'll be back next week with more reviews and previews.